Welcome to Grounded with John Tester and Maritza Giorgio. We are going to do a little bit of a live chat here on Substack, go over some headlines, and then we have an episode being released with former HUD Secretary Julian Castro here later today. So we look forward to chatting with him. We're going to chat about all these things. We have the Texas redistricting. We have what's going on in DC. I have some questions about what's happening with HUD. He ran for president in 2020. He was the mayor of San Antonio at one point. So immigration, gosh, there's so much we can talk to him about.
That indeed. We look forward to this. This is going to be fun. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so let's start with the headlines here. We saw some big moves in your old stomping grounds. Yesterday, President Trump announced that he is deploying about 800 National Guard troops to the nation's capital. He claimed this is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. And here's the problem, though. The DOJ says the crime rate actually fell to the lowest rate in 30 years before this happened. He also said the DOJ would take command of the Metropolitan Police Department and that you will either see FBI agents or police on the streets. This is what he said, you're going to have a lot of essentially military, and we will bring in the military if it's needed. Okay, so he is required to notify Congress within 48 hours as laid out by the DC Home Rule Act. And the law also says he can only take control of DC police for 30 days, but Congress could extend that. And then he's also announced he's removing homeless camps. So some attorneys are calling this unlawful. And a lot of people are pointing out, hey, he did not call in the National Guard on January 6th.
Well, he did not call in the National Guard on January 6th. In fact, he was requested to do that and did not because I guess people that are working to overthrow the government aren't really a threat, I guess. I don't know. Hey, look, this in a word is, in my opinion, is the uh, the definition of trying to make people look a different direction. I work on a lot of equipment. I buy a lot of stuff, just like everybody that's watching it does. The inflation rate's going through the roof, and the tariffs aren't helping. Um, you're seeing all sorts of things in our economy that are going upside down. You see the Epstein thing that's happening. You see the taking away of due process and all that. Look, this is all about pivoting and moving to something else. Unfortunately, it's also, I think, about what's the world going to look like if martial law is instituted. And this is what happens when you do have a president that don't doesn't is so old that they don't know what they're doing. And quite frankly, I think that's what's going on right now. He's being told what to do. He's not thinking real well, in my opinion, or he would reevaluate his tariff crap because it's killing us economically. And and he'd also released the Epstein stuff because he promised to do that, but he hasn't done it. And so this is about take to have make sure people take their eyes off the ball. I just this is this is crazy. It's also a Democratic city, and so you've got plenty of Republican-run cities that are probably worse than Washington D.C. I've never ever went to a town and said this is a Democratic city or this is a Republican city. This is how crazy this whole partisan bullshit has gotten. And so, yeah, bad deal. I think it's stupid. I think it hurts the country. I think it hurts our nation's capital. I think if we're waiting for Congress to do something, just look at the last 7 months. They haven't done jack shit, and they ain't going to do anything on this. My prediction.
Um, Yeah, I always think about that, like when you say a blue state or a red state. I mean, because we live in Montana, which is now a deep red state. There are lots of Democrats who live here. You go to a blue state, there are lots of Republicans that live there. So it's not like it's just all sequestered into one area. But the other thing that I think about with this is I spent a lot of time in DC in the grand scheme of cities I've traveled to, I really feel safe there. Like, have you had any incidents that you didn't feel safe when you were there?
So look, there's parts of the town that you got to be careful not to go into, especially at night. But hell,
Like every town.
there's parts of Montana like that. Okay, you just gotta use your brains, and I just think that this whole thing is just It's a really bad precedent, I think, especially when it's being done without a sense of what the hell's really going on in the town. And as far as cities go, I'll just tell you this. On the East Coast, this is my own personal opinion. Boston's my favorite. Oh, I guess that's a blue city now, isn't it? Oh my God, you can't have that. And Washington D.C. is second, probably because I know the town better. But they're all great. But the truth is Philly and New York and Miami and all those cities and all everybody else that I've forgotten about in between are great towns and great cities and have their own ambiance. But for the president to walk out, not even knowing what a dozen eggs costs or a loaf of bread costs, and say, "Well, there's too much violence going on here," when the truth is, this is all about politics, and in the end, the folks at D.C. will probably end up suffering.
Okay, so the Supreme Court has been formally asked to take up a case that urges the court to overturn the Obergefell v. Hodges ruling. That was the ruling that guaranteed the right to same-sex marriage across the nation. Justice Clarence Thomas specifically mentioned this in his statements when the court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022. This has been something a lot of my LGBTQ friends have been talking about and worried about since then. The filing says if it is overturned, the issue would go back to the states. Any same-sex couples already married would be grandfathered in. No word here on when the Supreme Court will decide, but I don't have to say this. I've seen a lot of posts from my friends who are LGBTQ who are very, very worried about this.
Well, what I think what this says, if you're gay and you want to get married, go get married right now because then you'll be grandfathered in. I mean, I don't understand why this case is brought forth to the Supreme Court. Number one, number two, if they will take it up. Number two, look, if gay marriage is bad, which who the hell cares? If same-sex marriage is same-sex marriage. If people love one another, they ought to be able to marry. I don't understand why this is even going on. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and it really does make same-sex folks second class, in my opinion. And so this is well, hell, this is Justice Clarence Thomas's agenda, quite frankly. So that's what he wants. And like I say, they've been asked to take it up. They may or may not take the case up,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep. And we'll see what happens here. But I remember this, during the 2016 election cycle, I remember how many people did we hear say, this is the law of the land when asked about Roe v. Wade. It's a law of the land. It's a law of the land. It's already been decided.
Yep.
And now everything is just kind of, we don't hear that very much anymore because things have been overturned.
Yep.
Okay. Big meeting coming up this week in Alaska with President Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump said on Friday that there will be a swapping of territories and a ceasefire deal. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, no way. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. We have other leaders of countries across the world saying Zelensky should be at this meeting, kind of really taking back seat, though, to all this news coming out of D.C.
Well, Zelensky should be at the meeting. And they're talking about his country, and they've been fighting for it with their lives. We have seen Putin delay so he could bomb the shit out of them since Trump got into office. We've seen us pull back resources for Ukraine, somebody who's fighting for their democracy, somebody who is occupied by a dictatorial president. Look, I don't know what's going to come out of this thing with Putin, but I'll be surprised if anything changes. I think they're going to still continue to bomb, and the president's probably going to say, "Well, I tried, but it's Ukraine's fault." Well, in fact, Ukraine did nothing wrong here. This is Russia's fault, and Russia needs to be held accountable, and that's where we're at.
All right, a lot of people, especially women I know, talking about this one. There's a new clip out. It was amplified and shared by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Basically, CNN did this whole story about kind of the the religious movement happening across the country, and they went to Idaho. And the story features pastors saying that women shouldn't be able to vote. Some are calling for the 19th Amendment to be repealed. Your history brush up here says that's the amendment that gave women the right to vote. And Hegseth shared it with the comments of, quote, all of Christ for all of life. So a lot of people are watching this and wondering if that's something they're coming for next. That it should be like a household vote, not
Well,
women's rights.
you just got in talking about gay marriage potentially being revoked by the Supreme Court. So, I think anything's out there. My dad, God bless his soul, great guy, always had a saying, religion isn't bad, it's the people in it that make it bad. Um, True. It's a true statement right here. Look at it on paper. The fact that these folks are trying to devalue women, which you can say anything you want, say, no, no, that's not it. Bullshit. That's what you're trying to do. Just goes contrary to everything that normal people believe in. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it's
All, by the way, all in the name of religion. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
eliminate. Yeah, I know. I think everyone needs to go back and watch Mary Poppins and watch the suffragette movement there. All of the women rallying for the right of vote, or
I got Maritza, I disagree. I think I got a better idea. Maybe you ought to start by reading the goddamn Constitution. Okay?
oh,
That'd
that
be
would have
nice.
been better.
That'd be
That
nice.
would be
And then Mary
better.
Poppins right after that. Then Mary Poppins
All
goes
right.
away.
Then Mary Poppins. Yeah, I just can't even believe we're talking about this. So, here we are. And then the other thing, this happened last week, but we really need to talk about it. And we're actually working on an episode specifically about this. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. cut funding for mRNA vaccine research to the tune of $500 million. Okay, so the former Surgeon General during Trump 1.0, Jerome Adams, came out right away. He said it's short-sighted. It puts us at a disadvantage globally. RFK said this is because the mRNA vaccines didn't protect effectively against COVID-19. He said they're unsafe, all contradicted, by the way, by scientific studies, peer-reviewed scientific studies. But also, these mRNA vaccines are not just about COVID. And there has been, I remember when I was covering COVID extensively, that's all I covered. And then the vaccines came out, and everybody was so excited to go get their vaccine so we could get back to normal. There have been studies about how to use these vaccines to treat and protect against cancer, other deadly diseases. And the really scary thing that I talked about last night, I think, is that once these go away, you can't just flip the switch back on. This is decades of research that if you just get rid of, you can't continue that research. You'd have to start back over. So,
Oh, so correct, young child. You're correct. Um, Look, there's a lot to unpack here, but I'm going to start by saying the person who says that vaccines don't work is a guy that takes his grandkids swimming in sewage in Washington, D.C. Maybe that's where President Trump should send the National Guards, clean up the waters. That'd be great. Look, I'm all about making America healthy again. Maha. I think that'd be great to do, but this ain't doing it. When I was in the Senate, I talked to an individual. I'll save him that. But he said, the United States doesn't lead the world in a lot of things, but what they do lead the world in is research. And this Make America Great Again movement, now it wants to take that away and give that to China because that's exactly where it's going to go. And then we will be dependent on those guys, the same people that Trump put the tariffs on to hold them accountable. This doesn't make any sense at any level. And it's what happens when you have a lunatic, the Department of Health and Human Services. And I mean that absolutely unequivocally. I wouldn't hire RFK to come out and pull weeds in my field. There's no way in hell that he should be Health and Human Services Secretary because he doesn't have a clue about what the fuck is going on.
would you let me come pull weeds in your field?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in fact, he should.
All right. That's good. Hey, George is on our Substack here, and he says if you look at the political trouble brewing for 2026, women are looking strong and scaring MAGA minions. Is that part of what's at play here?
Well, maybe I hope it is that shallow, but I think it's also a belief that women are second-class citizens, quite frankly. I think it's both. Probably driven by the latter, but the former also has impacts. I
I
think
have
he's
to get
right,
on
though.
it.
I think it's a good thing to think of. I mean, these guys are changing the rules on gerrymandering, which sucks anyway, which we'll get into Secretary Castro here in a bit.
Yeah, and the other thing too that I think we should kind of discuss here is that as we look at 2026 and beyond, and we talk about going back and reading the Constitution, how many people said, "Go read Project 2025"?
Well,
And
yeah.
have you read it all 900 some pages?
I've got it committed to memory. I've got a chapter and verse. No, I have not read it. Read parts of
It's a
it.
lot. It's a lot.
I mean, it's a load, but you know what? It's being implemented chapter and verse. That's a fact. And just go down the line. And people are getting so desensitized that they aren't even understanding, or they're not even caring, I guess, really what's going on. As the lady who was not on Putin's good side, who I got to know through my work with the University of Chicago, said, "This is no time to be complacent. No time to sit on your hands. This is a time where people need to speak up and make sure their opinions are heard for as long as we have an amendment that says we have freedom of speech."
Nancy is commenting that pulling weeds builds a work ethic for kids. I agree, Nancy.
Yeah,
I
since
agree.
you're still a child at heart, you could go do that. It would do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last headline before we hop off here. So the vice president, JD Vance, has been on a lot of vacations. A lot of people are looking at these vacations, but most recently he went on an Ohio river trip to celebrate his birthday. And apparently the security detail had the water level raised to allow that kayaking trip.
Well, being
The
vice
Secret
president,
Service requested it. The Secret
being
Service
vice
requested the
president has
increase.
its benefits, I guess. Yeah, thank God he didn't get hurt because of the hot water or the people in Ohio Water District or whatever the name
I
of it.
mean,
And then,
most people most people, if the water levels are too low, maybe you go to a different river or you make a
yeah,
different
that
plan.
that that would probably be a good idea. But remember, he's from Ohio, so it's probably why he wanted to be in Ohio. You know.
Oh, yeah,
But
that's right.
there's some pretty vicious whitewater rafting in the West, and is he out here? Is he supposed to be out here pretty quick, raising a bunch of money for the Republicans down in Big
Oh,
Sky,
he just was. He just
which
was.
isn't really Montana, but it's a short drive to Montana. What's that?
He just was here, yeah. It is
You're just like
Montana.
here?
Big Sky's Montana. Well, you mean like in the cultural
Yes,
reference?
Nicole. Correct.
Okay. So we are going to pivot a little bit from the headlines and into our conversation with former HUD Secretary Julian Castro. And really, we wanted to have him on to talk about what's happening in Texas over redistricting. And we've been talking a little bit about this in our last couple of episodes. But here's kind of the background. So there's this proposed release in Texas for a redistricting map. Redistricting is what helps, what draws the boundaries for our congressional House districts in states. So in Montana, up until just a couple of years ago, we only had one district, so we didn't have to deal with this. And then we regained a district because of the census. And so there was a whole committee that redrew the map so that we had two districts, right? But Montana has two. These other states have a lot more than that. So there's this whole process called redistricting where they draw the maps, and there are all kinds of rules around how they draw them. And they're usually done after the census, usually about every 10 years. That's not what's happening now in Texas. So this is to try to accomplish the president's goal of adding more Republican seats in Congress, and this is a year before the 2026 midterms. Texas Governor Greg Abbott he said that they're doing this because the DOJ says four current districts that lean left are unconstitutional. And the Cook Political Report already released early analysis that shows this proposed map could help the GOP win 30 districts in Texas. This is just the first map proposal. It doesn't mean it's final. And what has happened is, in order to vote, In Texas, there needs to be a quorum, and we'll get into that in a second. But these several House Democrats in Texas said, "No, we're out of here," and they've left the state. So we are going to dig into this further, and that's why we want to pivot now to our conversation with former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro, and welcome him to the show. We have a lot to talk about, so thank you for being with us, Secretary.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Great to have you take some time out of what I know is busy days and visit with Maritza, and I'll pitch in a few things here and there.
He'll do a lot. So I want to start with what's happening in Texas. There's so much to talk about, right? We'll get to what's happening in DC right now, and we'll get to immigration. But I want to do a little bit of kind of basic civics teaching here, and go back a little bit, because I don't think every single person on the street knows what a quorum is, and I don't think every single person on the street understands this whole redistricting battle that we're seeing play out in Texas. So I want to kind of go back a little bit, explain it. So let's just start there. A quorum is the minimum number of members needed to make an official proceeding valid. In Texas, it's required that you have a 2/3 quorum for voting. So about a week ago, maybe a little bit longer, Texas House Democrats basically said, "Hey, we are going to leave. We are not going to participate because of this effort to redraw the lines in the middle of a decade for Texas House districts." Do I have all that right? Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh,
So where are we today?
well, you summed it up very well. So basically redistricting, which is assigning the districts, in this case, that United States congressional representatives will run in, is done by the state legislature in each state. And it's traditionally supposed to be done after the census comes out, except that twice now in Texas, first in 2003 and then now in the last couple of weeks, Republicans have tried to jam through mid-decade redistricting, and Democrats left the state to break quorum, to deny them the opportunity to scramble these districts in a way that would end up producing 5 more Republican held seats. This is an effort by Democrats basically to stop a move that would take away representation from a lot of communities in Texas. The maps that they draw here, y'all, are just crazy. They're drawing these maps that stretch, hundreds of miles in some cases, to connect areas that are very conservative, just to piece together as many Republican seats as they can. In the process, I wouldn't say in the background, one of the main um, side effects of this is that it also takes away black and brown representation. 95% of the growth in the state of Texas between 2010 and 2020 was in a Hispanic and African American community, and Asian American community. Um, but at the same time, that hasn't been matched at all by the representation in the state. So there's a lot at play here, not only in the state of Texas, but also I think this is Donald Trump's way of avoiding accountability in 2027 and beyond. He wants
Yeah.
to make sure that there's not a democratically controlled House of Representatives in Washington. So they can't investigate him, they can't hold him accountable for his corruption, all of those things. Um, and, uh, that's why he asked Texas Governor Greg Abbott to do this mid-decade redistricting.
So I'm up here in Montana. I don't know Texas. Okay. And that's probably a good thing, by the way. Is this really, number one, is this going to happen regardless of the Democrats stay away or not? That's number one. Can they stay away forever? That's the first question. And the second question is, it would appear to me that if you try to make 5 of these districts more Republican, it's going to thin out the majority margin much more. So it comes with risk. And if people say, you know what, I don't like what's going on immigration. I wanted a secure border, but what's being done here is insane. Or if they say, the tariff stuff, it ain't working for me, and I don't know anybody else that it's working for, and it certainly isn't putting pressure on China. In fact, it's making China more powerful worldwide economically. Or if they say, the Epstein stuff, the president promised he was going to release it, and then he didn't. Is there a possibility this could backfire?
Oh, there's absolutely a possibility that could backfire. I mean, let's just take a look at what happened in the last midterm of the Trump era. In 2018, Democrats in Texas picked up 2 congressional seats. Those congressional seats, which were won by Lizzie Fletcher and Colin Allred, were in the suburbs of Houston and of Dallas. Democrats within the state picked up 2 state Senate seats and 12 state House seats. So there's a history here in Texas of especially suburban communities, places that had been red, let's say, Senator, basically like country club or business Republicans. Now, admittedly, there are less and less of those, it seems like, in the Republican Party these days.
Correct.
However,
Yeah. For damn
like,
good reason. For damn
yeah,
good
I
reason.
mean, of course, yeah, but you saw a shift during those years that really has never gone back to the way it was before. So yes, there's absolutely risk that they could draw these districts counting on the votes of people who are sliding away from them, including overconfidence with the Latino community, with Hispanics in South Texas, because the map they've produced draws Republican districts that include a lot of Hispanics that, yes, in South Texas, more of them trended than before toward Donald Trump and Republicans in especially 2024, but to some extent 2020. But if that changes in 26 and 28, yeah, that's gonna be a terrible map. That's not gonna be the map that Republicans bargained for.
So let's go back to the first part of that question then. Can Democrats stop this from happening, or is it just a matter of time?
Very tough to completely stop it from happening. If history is any guide, it's more likely to get delayed than defeated. But here's the thing, they do have deadlines, right? In order to, as y'all well know, I mean, in order to get the 26 election in place, and in Texas, the primary happens in March, they have to get these maps in order by early December, is my understanding. So if it were pushed, if Democrats could hold out, uh, for a few
Uh,
months somehow,
Another,
which
another
is
four
tough.
months.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically almost 4 months away still, but let's say they could get there to early December. Yes, it's possible that they could create a real headache that would make it difficult for Republicans to actually have the 26th primary on time. I say that, but also some folks may remember that in 2012 Republicans actually ended up delaying the primary, because of back and forth, I think, then with redistricting after that census. And one of the byproducts of that year was that Ted Cruz had more time in the primary to defeat David Dewhurst, who was then, I believe, the sitting lieutenant governor. All of that is to say that Republicans have also broken through deadlines before when it comes to putting on elections here in Texas in the recent past. So, if I had to say, if I had to call it right now, I would say probably this is a move that is going to delay rather than defeat these lines. But
Well, because it's hard. I mean, we know that there are a lot of, lawmakers from Texas in Chicago right now. I was reading kind of about all of the things that they have to deal with. I mean, these are human beings who have families and jobs and kids, and their life is basically put on hold for this move right now. And then you have I mean, I've seen some of the threats against them, right? Like, we've seen some people say they need to go be arrested and charged. I'm kind of curious what you think about that. I think it was John Cornyn, Senator John Cornyn. He called he called for the FBI to track down these legislators who fled Texas. And then we have, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, asking the Supreme Court there to declare these seats vacant and basically kick them out of their office. Like, how do you see all of that playing out? Not just them being gone from the state, but all of these people trying to say they need to be held accountable for leaving.
I mean, Republicans are trying to use every tool in the toolbox, whether it's legal or not, to bring these Democrats back and get quorum. And for Senator Cornyn to ask the FBI to get involved when it is not against Texas law to break quorum. There is no illegality in that act, and they know that. That's well established. And so they're trying to invent these other reasons that law enforcement should or could get involved, including suggesting that uh, because the state representatives have accepted resources from groups to help them pay the fines that they owe, which is $500 a day for being absent, from the legislature. These are civilian fines, not criminal fines, but that because they've accepted those dollars, they've somehow been bribed. They're engaging in accepting bribes. And Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, has also gone after Beto O'Rourke's group, Powered by People, because they've been providing some support. Now, mind y'all, in Texas, there are no contribution limits. It is the Wild West. And so this is one of the ironies of this, is that these Republicans have kept in place this system where no contribution limits, lobbyists wine and dine, do whatever you want. And then all of a sudden, when they needed to create pressure to bring these Democrats back, they say, wait, you guys are illegally, taking bribes. Not only that, I mean, Ken Paxton was on trial for years. Now, ultimately, he did not get convicted. He was able to stave it off, but he was indicted for different fraudulent activity. So there's just a high level of hypocrisy here, and the pressure is mounting on these Democrats. I talked to one state representative the other day, and he said that he was missing his young daughter's first day of school this week because he's out in Illinois. He also mentioned that others have had relatives who are sick that they're not able to visit. This is a part-time legislature, so they also have other jobs. That means that you got to rely on an employer who's understanding. I mean, and how many employers just let you stay out of your job, for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks or even longer? It's difficult to do, and there is a certain level of sacrifice and of risk on their part.
And for folks like me, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Secretary, but Paxton is running against Cornyn in a primary for that U.S. Senate seat, correct?
That's right. Yeah, and he's more than a dozen points behind in the latest poll. Cornyn.
Which one? Cornyn?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a guy that's politically desperate. Many people expect him to lose that primary. He's doing everything that he can to show his bona fides of, I'm the biggest Trumper that in Texas. Ken Paxton was Trump's actual Texas campaign chair, so that's tough. But that's definitely what's behind Cornyn pulling this move of asking Kash Patel and the FBI to get involved. It's all politics on their part.
Yeah, and it's also about Paxton asking the Supreme Court to have the seats vacated that are held by the Democrats and all that. It's who can be the biggest MAGA. You're right, 100% correct. Yeah,
Yeah, it's also for the Democrats, just in terms of the politics of 26. If Paxton wins that primary, the thinking goes, and I think it's accurate, that that's a more likely pickup for Democrats. Still going to be tough, but probably it's more within range if Paxton wins that primary and he's the nominee for Senate than Cornyn. Cornyn's been there forever. He's had some crossover appeal. He's gone as MAGA as he can lately, but, it's hard to beat incumbents.
I think that this is a good time to mention that if you are somebody who's voted in presidential elections and you skip the midterms or you don't really participate in your state elections, this is a perfect example of why it's important because these are the lawmakers who help decide these maps
Yep.
and who draw these lines. And when something kind of piqued my like a red flag went up a little bit, Secretary, when you talked about the growth in Texas, in the brown and black communities and what this could do to those communities as far as representation. And then we have the Supreme Court looking at this redistricting plan from Louisiana and trying to answer the question of a second majority black district that was made if that violates the Constitution. And then earlier on, Senator Tester and I talked about this headline of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth sharing a video that basically has Christian leaders calling to repeal the 19th Amendment to remove the right to vote for women. So, do you think that we're headed really in that direction? Do you worry about this disenfranchisement for minorities as we move ahead? Do you think that America will stop it?
Yeah, I still believe that there are enough, reasonable, good-hearted, uh, people who are informed enough, who are able to get through the clutter today that we face with misinformation and even disinformation to make rational decisions that will take our country forward. I think, in our country, everybody knows, had been nowhere near perfect, but there was no question that we made so much progress. I think one of the best um, speeches that I ever heard Barack Obama make was at the 50th anniversary, the commemoration of the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. And several of us in the cabinet were there that day to watch it, and there were a lot of people there. And he talked about the fact that we still have a lot of progress to make, but that we should be proud of the progress that we have made. And it's that progress toward equality um, that Trump is just completely determined to roll back. And people like Pete Hegseth and sharing that video where you have these folks openly talking about that they believe women should not be able to vote, that they're against the 19th Amendment. I mean, it's ridiculous. And yes, I think that side, especially a certain crowd within that side, is trying to take us completely backward, but I don't think that they're gonna succeed. I actually believe that 2026 is gonna be a tsunami against Republicans, that it's gonna mirror 2018, that this has been a slower build than we saw in 2017 and 2018 when like 1,000,000 people get out in March and people are protesting at the airports and so forth. But there's a lot of quiet indignity out there and a recognition that this is not who we should be. And I believe that if everybody does their work and informs people and organizes between now and then, that people are going to show up and push back against this and at least create a check in that system and more accountability and take us in the right direction on these issues.
I will agree with you, and I think the statement that you said everybody has to do their work is really, really important, especially the folks who are serving in Congress on the Democratic side of the aisle. The truth is that I don't need to tell you this. Your brother's in Congress, and this doesn't mean to say anything bad about your brother because we love him as much as you. In fact, we probably get you mixed up once in a while. But the truth is that Democrats have to come up and really be for a set of principles and policies that regular folks can say, you know what? That's what I am right there. I'm part of that group. I'm not part of this group that wants to take away due process and take away voting rights and all this other crap um that's going on. And there's a lot of other crap going on, as you well know. But you're exactly right. If people do their work, then this has a chance to be an election of accountability. And I think that's really important. So
And
Good
before
point.
we move on, I do have one more question about this because we see like Gavin Newsom, California Governor Gavin Newsom, has been very vocal in response to this whole redistricting plan in Texas. And he has been threatening to do the same in California. And he's kind of playing this game of chicken. He put out a post that sounded very Trump-esque in all caps. And I think he even said, "Thank you for your attention to this matter" at the end, and basically saying, you can back down on this plan and we won't go forward. But here's the problem. The process looks different in other states. And The Atlantic had an article out this weekend that basically says the process is longer and harder in states like California and New York because of rules put in place designed to prevent this specific thing. So, is this threat, does it have teeth? Does this threat have teeth? Could it actually impact 2026, or is it going to take a lot longer if Democrats say, "All right, we're going to do the same"?
I mean, yes, that threat can have teeth. I mean, they are moving forward in California with, um, I believe, a ballot initiative that would move from their commission style of redistricting under the law. By the way, that was put in two parts in 2008 for state legislative districts and 2010 for congressional districts. They'd have to peel that back. Uh, so it can be done. And I think the latest polling that I saw shows that Californians support that, obviously a very Democratic state. You have others like Governor Hochul in New York talking about perhaps a similar move. I think all of us, though, I think a lot of Democrats feel like, there's sort of a unsettling feeling, right? Because we recognize this is not the direction that we want to go in. This race to the bottom is not something that we think is in the best interests of Americans overall or our democracy in the long term. A lot of Democrats support that, the people pick their politicians. The politicians don't pick their people, which is what happens in this extreme gerrymandering. But a lot of people also see it, I think, as a necessary evil if Republicans in Texas and in a number of other states are going to do this. My hope is that, it won't happen in Texas, but if I had to put odds on it right now, I would say that it probably will. And, if it does, then, I believe that it's legitimate for other states to look at, how they can level the playing field, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think truthfully, especially with AI now, I think AI could set up a set of rules that would make the reapportionment actually make sense and not be slanted politically Democrat or Republican, which, if people can't do it, let's depend upon a computer to do it. But because they're using computer information anyway to draw these goddamn gerrymandered districts. So what the hell? Your philosophy is exactly how I feel. I think gerrymandering sucks. But if we're gonna do this bullshit, then we can't let one side do it, and not the other side, and all that. But I just don't think it solves the problem. And it's what you said. Constituents pick their elected representatives. Elected representatives don't pick their constituents. It's bass backwards. And so, yeah, thank
No doubt, no doubt.
Okay, so Secretary, you're a lawyer, and I know you lived in DC when you were HUD secretary. I want to get your thoughts about what we're seeing play out and the legality of what we're seeing play out on Washington DC with the National Guard being deployed to basically police the streets there. We have the president kind of threatening actual military police presence, and now he's saying that he's looking at deploying forces to more cities like New York City, and I predicted this one, Chicago, where your Texas lawmakers are still uh, residing at this moment.
I mean, in a lot of ways, this is, the Trump MO. He creates a big lie, and in this case, the big lie is that DC is out of control. In fact, crime has dropped in Washington, DC over the last couple of years precipitously. It's dropped a lot. And but he's making it seem like there's some huge emergency that requires him or justifies him invoking federal law that allows uh, the president, the federal government, to take control of the District of Columbia. Now, in 30 days, it requires also that Congress then authorizes him to do it. But for now, he's exercising control that he has under the law, but he's doing it based on another big lie. And a lot of people fear that this is just the beginning of, like you say, doing this where he actually doesn't have the same authority in a place like Chicago, New York, LA. We saw what they did in LA, right, on immigration over enforcement. I think fewer and fewer people these days doubt that this guy is an authoritarian, that he wants to control everything, and that this is one more expression of that. I'll just say also as a mayor, I served as mayor of my hometown of San Antonio for 5 years. It makes it impossible really for the local government to do their job well when they really don't have control over one of the most basic functions of the city, which is keeping people safe. And it creates a problem for those constituents in their relationship with that local government. The relationship with local government is often one of the most meaningful, fruitful, like productive relationships, much more productive than a relationship with the federal government or even the state government. People still trust local government and they see results in local government. They feel like there's an accountability and a responsibility in local government. When you send in a federal force, you break that up and you create problems for that local government. In the long run, that's going to make it worse. And I think it's going to end up making DC work less well, not better.
Couldn't agree with you more. And by the way, it used to be, it used to be where you would send people to Washington, D.C. from Texas or Montana or pick a state, Iowa, Florida, and they would look out for their state, not empower D.C. And as you said, as you already pointed out, the government closest to the people is the best government. And I believe that after serving in the U.S. Senate. But in the end here, until people that represent you in Washington, D.C. to have the ability to tell the president, no, oh my God, who would ever think of doing that if you were a U.S. Senator in the Republican Party? Tell them no, then this kind of bullshit's going to continue to go on. And like you said, it's not good for government. And it's the federal government walking, I mean, literally walking on the states' rights, local county rights, city rights. If they wanted to do something, if the federal government really wanted to do something, that you could say, Tester, you advocate for this, fix gerrymandering. That'd be something that'd be a good thing to do to walk on states' rights, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's just crazy to think, right? Like, in the 80s and before them, but really in my lifetime in the 80s, Republicans were all about local control. And
Absolutely.
think about what they did at the federal level, even in my old neck of the woods, right? With block grants, for instance, where it wasn't DC making the decisions about how money was going to be spent on infrastructure or housing or other things. It was the local level, the state and local level. And now it's just completely reversed. They're taking away home rule authority in state legislatures all over the place. Trump has moved his forces into DC and LA and wants to do it in other places. It's like the world turned upside down. And at some point, y- you know, and I think this is why more and more people are going to leave the Republican Party. What in the world do you stand for? You know,
100%.
what do you stand for? Democrats are taking a lot of flack for, well, what are you standing up for? But really, these guys have turned on their head exactly what they said they stood for so many decades.
Yep.
There's some lines from Hamilton in there. I caught those. World turned upside down. Okay, so the Trump administration is also promising to clear up homeless encampments in DC. And related to that and your work as former HUD secretary, I want to ask you to help us understand more because, we're hearing so much about what's happening in DC, Epstein, tariffs, investigating Barack Obama, but I have not heard a lot about stuff going on within HUD. But when I was researching for this interview, I saw this proposed change to HUD rules that I had not heard anything about yet, and it would put a 2-year limit on low-income rental assistance programs. And NYU research shows that if families were cut off who are on those programs after 2 years, it could mean 1.4 million US households that would actually lose vouchers and public housing subsidies. So I'm wondering how closely you're Oh, go ahead, Senator.
Back up and say that again. This isn't 1.4 million people. This
No,
is 1.4 million houses.
household
Household.
households. So if we're talking about fixing the problem of homelessness, and we're talking about changing programs that could impact 1.4 million households and losing their housing vouchers. I'm wondering how closely you're following that and what we need to know about that. But my follow-up question would be, what else is going on within HUD that we're not hearing about, that we
Yeah.
need to be paying attention to?
Well, yeah, I have no doubt that there's a lot that none of us hear about, right? That they're doing all types of rule changes, things that I have no doubt that they're violating, you know, number of laws and procedures in trying to basically cut off housing opportunity, right? When Barack Obama got to office, one of the first things he did was he created something called Opening Doors, which was a blueprint to end homelessness, starting with veteran homelessness. Now, we know that veteran homelessness was not ended during Barack Obama's tenure, but between 2010 and 2016, veteran homelessness was reduced by 47%. And it was reduced by 47% because Washington worked well with state governments, local governments to use best practices, to get more vouchers into the hands of veterans who needed uh, housing, to get more resources into the hands of the VA and HUD to administer that program. And it worked. You cut it almost in half. There was also a plan for family homelessness and chronic homelessness. This goes in the other direction. This is cutting people off after 2 years. And at first blush, somebody might say, well, 2 years, that sounds like a lot of time. If I remember correctly, the average length of time was something between 5 and 7 years that people are on housing vouchers. So it takes some time often for people to get back on their feet, but they do. And we've seen this work, for years. And so instead of expanding that opportunity, because there are huge waiting lists for vouchers, in fact, HUD only serves 1 out of every 4 people that need its resources for housing. So there are 3/4 of the people right now that, even before Trump, that don't even get the resource that they're looking for. It's not some, Reagan-esque welfare agency that's just handing out housing vouchers here and there to anybody that wants it. That was never true. The opposite is true. There aren't the resources that you would want. So to cut it down to 2 years, to artificially limit it like that without providing other housing opportunity, and at the same time, to, further this notion that if you're homeless, that you're dangerous or that you're just lazy, that's completely inaccurate. And, this is another reason that, um, I think a lot of people are gonna be worse off because of this administration. And when it comes to HUD, there's just no belief in that mission. There's no support for it. They've even gone so far as to put the building up for sale that HUD is in, that they've been since LBJ inaugurated it in 1967. I think, that's more kind of emblematic than anything else of an abandonment of the mission of trying to provide housing opportunity. And the last thing I'll say here is th- the need to bridge that gap on housing isn't just in these urban environments. This is everywhere. You go to small towns in the United States, you go to medium-sized towns, and people will tell you that the rent has gone up and up and up. And people of every background, and Republicans and Democrats, everywhere. I'm sure, Senator, they're in Montana. You hear about it. I mean, you go to some of these Montana cities and especially because people have moved in over the last few years, I mean, things have skyrocketed. So these Republicans that are allowing this to happen, they have a lot of constituents in their own backyard that are hollering for more help when it comes to housing affordability.
Yep, and it's not only in the bigger towns in Montana, it's even the very small ones the same way. It's gone through the roof. And by the way, we also need to point out this is being done to save money to give tax breaks to the uber rich, so that they can give money for a $200 million golden ballroom in the White House. Those private dollars that are being raised for that are tax dollars that should be going into the tax, because it's money that was given to the uber rich, and now the uber rich are saying, you know what, uh, Mr. Whatever you want to call him, president or anything else, we're going to give you money for a golden ballroom because that's what the United States stands for, right? Jesus Christ, unbelievable. Yeah,
Okay.
let me ask.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
got one more, and then I've got to head out and get
I
some
know,
work
I know, I know.
today. I mean, I like bullshitting with the secretary, but this is the way it is. So you come from a state that has a lot of people of color, a lot of Latinos.
Mhm.
In the last election, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this because I'm pulling it from memory, and my memory is getting worse every day. But the truth is that I think the majority of them voted for Trump. Um, the question is what are the actions that ICE and others are doing? What are you hearing on the ground from folks that you live with? Are they happy with what's going on, or are they not so happy, or are they aghast, or where's it out on the pissed off scale?
I think people feel like Trump's gone way overboard, and they keep seeing these stories that come across their feed, of, for instance, the father of 3 Marines that was detained and threatened with deportation and humiliated, or street vendors in Los Angeles that all they're doing they're selling their roasted corn, or just trying to make a living. People working in factories, people showing up to Home Depot because they're day laborers and, they're just here to work. Folks working on farms that have been doing that for years. People that are rooted in their communities that have been here 20, 30 years, that have raised families, that have been law abiding. Yeah, I think that it's getting to people. People are recognizing that this guy, um, what he wants to do is he wants to get rid of a lot of people who absolutely are good people and who have been contributing to the forward progress of the country. And when I talk to folks in the Latino community, and especially, immigrants themselves, a lot of them say, well, they thought that he was just going to go after the criminals, people that had, and by that, people that had committed a crime while they were in the United States. And I feel like telling folks, I mean, didn't you realize that this guy was, when he says criminals, he thinks of you because he thinks, well, you came over here illegally, and so you're a criminal. It doesn't matter what you've done since you've been here in his mind, in the mind of Stephen Miller and others. But a lot of people didn't take it that way. And now we're finding out that that's exactly what he meant. What he meant was, if you're here and you're undocumented, that you're fair game. I think it's turning people off, not just Latinos, but, people of every background, because that's not what a lot of people signed up for. And so I think in 2026 that you're probably going to see a reaction to that. As you know, Senator, I mean, the challenge is, okay, well, how do we get this right? How do you get the policy right where you both manage the border and then also create a pathway to citizenship for dreamers and other people who have been here working hard, and that they go through a process? That's something that absolutely we still need to work toward as a country. And my hope is that when this guy is out of the Oval Office and we have more sanity, hopefully, and a Republican and a Democratic Party that can work on that, that we make progress toward that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the key is this next election is hopefully it'll be straight up and not screwed with. which, by the way, I have some worries about myself. But if people vote, and if people are watching the real news, not the fake news, not the trumped up stories that are made up to be able to justify actions, I think they will see that this country isn't being made great. In fact, just the opposite. And that worries me because I know how China wants to replace us economically and militarily, and it looks to me like the actions of this administration and the actions of Congress, too, by the way, probably more so than this administration, are doing their level best to make it so China is all they can be, which is crazy. You got one more question, then I got to go, Maritza.
Okay, this is the silliest question you're gonna hear all day because we wanna end on some fun.
Yeah.
I don't know any identical twin that hasn't at one point tried to pull the wool over their friends or families or teachers' eyes and do a swap. Have you and your brother, Representative Julian Castro, ever, like, even joked about doing that?
Oh, we have. In fact, we did that in high school. So we had, I think we had the same class. I can't even remember what the subject was now. Um, but basically, I had the class, let's say in third period, and then he had it in fourth period, and I just stayed there. And the teacher didn't even realize that it was the same person with the same clothes on, and, so we had to do that, Maritza, because when you're twins will know this. Everybody always asks you throughout your life, "Oh, have you ever switched? Have you
Right,
ever?"
right, right.
So I mean, you gotta do something so that you have
But, like,
something to
you've
prove to.
never done it in your roles in government.
No, no, in 2005 when I was running for mayor, we I was gonna go to a river parade in San Antonio. They do these river parades on the San Antonio River, and have my brother as a guest, and then at the last minute, I didn't go, but he still went on the barge, and my political opponent said that we were trying to switch and that he was running, because it was during a campaign, but that was not intentional.
That is
Uh that kind of worked out, I guess, in the same way, but it wasn't intentional. The one in high school was intentional.
Oh, that is funny. Well, we wanna just thank you so much for your time. We covered a lot of ground, but thank you for joining us and kinda helping us understand what's happening in Texas and beyond a little bit better.
Yeah, one thing that I just kind of want to add is I really appreciate I appreciate you. I appreciate your brother too, by the way. You guys stepped up for public service at a young age, and it's cost you a lot. I know for a fact it's cost you a lot, but you continue to do it. And you continue to make the world a better place for everybody, for everybody. And the fact that you still have a number of years ahead of you, I hope that you're able to stay involved as well as others. But I think you set a fine example for young people to get involved in public service, get involved in electoral politics, get involved to make your community and your state and the country a better place. And so thanks for all your good work.
Well, thanks a lot, Senator. The feeling is mutual, and I just appreciate the chance to chat with y'all today.
It's
Alright.
always good. Take care. Be well. Hopefully, we'll see you on the trail somewhere. Okay.
Okay.
Alright,
Take
thank you, Secretary Castro.
care.
Okay, we will wrap this up so you can get on the combine. What?
What?
Oh, you're reaching for a folder.
I'm reaching for a folder. Yeah.
I thought you were, like, you gotta get online and buy the new Taylor Swift pre-order that she launched last night. There's a new Taylor Swift album coming out, didn't you hear?
I didn't, but I'm going to get right on that.
You better get on that. Okay, let's talk about your hat, and then we'll get you out on in the field. Oh, boy. The
Pronounce that name, huh?
Bogenstrom Company?
Hagenstrom's. Yep. It's a small business in Great Falls, Montana that specializes in concrete work. They pour everything from septic tanks to God, I can't even go down the list to concrete blocks to everything. But here's why this hat's important, okay? This hat's important because it's hard damn work and it's a small business and we always appreciate small locally owned businesses, but the work they do is hard. I mean, backbreakingly hard. So when I was just a little kid and my middle brother was a wrestler, we went to a wrestling meet in Great Falls, and there was this guy that wrestled heavyweight, either for Great Falls High or Great Falls Central. His name was Jim Dow. And Jim Dow literally was built like a tank. And he would go out there and literally pick these people up and pin them. I mean, just the damnedest thing you ever seen. And it was, as a kid, it was, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, I was going, holy shit, how does that guy do that? He did it by working his summers at Fagenstrom's, packing concrete bags around and sandbags and moving gravel and all that crap. So, nothing wrong with a little bit of hard work. By the
Right.
way, now son ended up being a page in the Montana State Legislature and ended up playing football for the University of Montana Grizzlies. Colin Dow is his name, and I hope he watches this podcast because as a little kid, his old man made a big impression on me. He's since passed away, but his dad has.
Well,
So,
we know it's
you
a
know,
small state and a small world, and so we know that if he's not watching, somebody will make sure he gets this episode.
absolutely, I hope so. Anyway,
Okay. Let me wrap up. You can find us here on Substack, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube. You can shoot us an email at groundedpcast@gmail.com. We want to thank everybody for all of your support. This only works because of people like you. And we want to thank our guest, former HUD Secretary Julian Castro, and our friends at Pearl Jam for letting us use their music. And to all of your listeners, I think we might chat again soon, and we'll have Senator Tester from the Combine, maybe.
yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I got to get the damn thing running. I had a breakdown yesterday, so we're going to try to get it rocking and rolling and get out there and try to feed the world.
All
Anyway,
right. Thanks, everybody.